freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream Crafting Icewind Day, in which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Rime of the Frostmaiden. If you're playing characters of Valravn, Frey, Celeste, Edmund, or Thimbleweed, this is not the right stream for you. I will see you tomorrow. It's full of spoilers. For the rest of you that don't mind spoilers, welcome. Stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. Watch all of our D&D live series, as well as reviews and Let's Plays on my YouTube channel. And read weekly session recaps at RogueWatson.com. You can follow me on Twitter at RogueWatson. And join our official Discord server with invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net. For streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, as always, for your patience. I had to get an inspiration roll for the baby handling check, but she is down for the count. And now we can discuss D&D. And I'll be honest, I am nervous as hell about this coming session. I was kind of nervous about last session, honestly, because this is such a unique quest that could be really cool or could be really dumb. And it's, you know, it's not a traditional like room-to-room dungeon crawl. It's very much like it's just an area with a bunch of dudes, and the players can make of it what they want. And it's, for the first time probably all campaign, this is the one that I'm modifying the most. And that is obviously nerve-wracking too, because it's a lot of stuff that I'm trying to change, I'm trying to add or subtract or make it more interactive and tie it to my players and their backstories, specifically obviously Valravn, which talk about something I did not expect, which we talked about this on Frostside Chat last week. Hopefully those of you that are the Uber fans are watching those post-session discussions, because those are pretty nice, where I was shocked that Chris basically revealed his secret in front of the players. And essentially threw in with Kadroth and kind of threw Avarice under the bus. So now I get to respond to that. And I think, so the way they left it last week is, was that they were, I think, going to go talk to Avarice next. Now, my plans for Avarice are to kind of use her similar to what it suggests in the book, which is to have her show up really in the third act. We're, you know, dividing the story up into Act 1 being the 10 towns, and then Sunblight. Act 2, which is going to be a lot of new modifications from me, which is hunting down the Arcane Brotherhood and finding out how to get to Aetherin, and then Act 3 will be Aetherin itself. And then she shows up kind of like a classic, you know, in all these Uncharted's or Indiana Jones, like any of the Lost City stuff, you've got the enemy faction, basically. And even though the heroes are searching their thing, they either get captured by or are followed by the enemy faction. In this case, that's going to be Avarice's Knights of the Black Sword. What would be amazing here, what I would love to set up, is if the players go talk to Avarice next, she reveals, hey, you know, I can't believe you're going to fucking fall for Kadroth's bullshit. He's a bad dude. You need to actually take him out. Because right now they basically have the quest from Kadroth to go take her out. And they do that, and then she can assume control of these people, and then she would promise to leave, you know, free the speaker, and she doesn't have any interest in the political machinations of running, you know, this town from this. Like, she has nothing like that, so that part would be truthful. But what she does want to do is find the source of the Chardalyn and work on that. So she would take her loyalists and leave, and that would essentially complete the quest in the party's favor. And then what they don't know is that Avarice would show up again in the late game and be a potential antagonist, or maybe just a cool kind of gray area. You know, maybe she could show up and actually, you know, the party could convince her to help them with, you know, the battle against Auril, the battle against whatever I use for the final villain, probably be an Elder Brain. You know, so I basically want to have Avarice in my back pocket as a DM. So the only thing I'm not going to let and a lot of this depends obviously on what the players are going to do here. The only thing I don't want to have happen is if they just decide to attack Avarice and take her out, because that would be narratively extremely dissatisfying for me. I guess if, what I could do is she gets defeated, and then that you lose one big part of the Arcane Brotherhood in the story, and then you could just replace her narratively with Kadroth, and maybe he eventually, takes his troops and goes on there. But because she's a relatively high-level wizard, and I kind of pumped her out to be a high-level wizard, I may just use some DM magics, in which case it could be, she could just cast Dimension Door or something. She has whatever spells I want her to have. She could just escape from whatever fight, and probably even give her legendary resistance too if it's needed, if the players try to lock her down with some spell. I think the only things they have would be Valravan's, maybe some kind of charm person type spell or something. She would not allow that shit to fly, and she could got counterspell. She's gonna have all these kind of tools that would disallow them for taking her out. But I hope there's obviously a dialogue sequence first. Raymond's Secret is causing me a problem because Stan, I haven't been utilizing it, which is my fault. I haven't forgotten about his, but I was honestly, and I didn't want to sound too pissed about this, but it did kind of fuck me up that he was not here for most of last session. That really did screw up what I was going to do, which was involve him more, have him be arrested by Kadroth. Instead, it ended up switching into this completely different aspect of Valravan really taking the reins, and then having it be he's going to reveal his secret and all that. So it ended up still being a really good session. It worked for that. But on the flip side is I think he also wasn't there for when he actually grabbed the Chardalyn, which was obviously supposed to be a big moment for his character from the Dwarger outpost. So what I need to do is just talk to Raymond separately and just be like, hey, what do we want to go forward with your character in terms of the relationship you have with Chardalyn now that you've got some in your possession? And I need to figure out exactly who is going to be hunting him, or if I want to create who is hunting him right now. Because my plan was that the Arcane Brotherhood hunts him, but if Avarice turns out she doesn't actually, she wants to work with the party, then obviously she wouldn't want to reveal her hand too quickly that they found. I don't want to. My point is, I don't want to turn Avarice into the antagonist of this quest, because I want to use her later on. Now, I guess we could have a combat encounter and she could disappear, but to me, it would be more narratively satisfying and interesting if she convinced the party to go. My plan is, and I've got this written down, obviously, in dialogue in my notes. My plan is to have the party talk to Avarice, and there's a big dialogue scene where she will basically say, Valravan, you naive fool, I can't believe you're gonna accept the bullshit that Kadroth is telling you. Did he tell you what he did with the speaker? The speaker's just been under house arrest this whole time, and he's been just a figurehead, and they essentially slaughtered his guards and violently took this place over once they were inside, and you can find the truth of that down below in the cistern. She will straight up tell them where that location is, with the assumption that they will then they will follow up on that. And she'll be like, don't take my word for it, go see the evidence. And I think that would be compelling for the players to then go, and she'll tell them there's a trapdoor in the northwest corner, here's where you can go and find out. And then they would enter that area, which I kind of want to turn into a little bit of a dungeon crawl, and do and really modify that area quite a bit, and then do the classic thing where when they discover the truth and they're leaving, then have Kadroth show up and be like, oh, Mr. what is his name, Lonrier, I thought we could work together and this would be a thing, but clearly you're too nosy for your own good. Do the fun little villain monologue, and then have him attack with his guards right there at that cistern map, which you can see I've got them kind of tokens right here. That would be, I think, a very narratively satisfying way to handle this area, is for him to, and it'd be funny because he initially was going to ally himself with Kadroth against Avarice, but I think talking to Avarice and will hopefully sway him differently. And then especially when she says, look, you need, and if you recall, he was rolling insight on Kadroth, and Kadroth was very genuinely supportive of his people, and I guess I don't know if he's playing Valravan as naive, or if he really believed Kadroth is a good person. And I'm not trying to make it a good and evil thing. I am trying to make shades of gray here, where Kadroth does legitimately think he's kind of the Professor X of his X-Men, where these are people that are affected by Chardalyn, and they would have, they would be in danger if they didn't have him to be able to kind of help them master their control over it and be able to like transmute it into different weapons and items. But that doesn't mean he's a nice. I mean, he's really more of a Magneto. Like he's not necessarily. He views like the other world as being hostile to them, and maybe his people are maybe not quite a supremacist, but in terms of my people are the future, but just other people are and he view the Marshals like you're the beginning, like you're the first ones that are going to come in here and really like be upset that we're doing things. And yes, we had to be proactive. Like the Speaker was not going to let us be here, and he's going to kick us out. And essentially, just he's not a good person, but he does technically care about his people. That's kind of like the shades of gray I wanted to convey here. So I'm not trying to go back on the insight checks and all, but if you remember, whenever he rolled to try to figure, or whenever he talked about the Speaker, Kadroth would always change the subject or just say, "Hey, we've got it taken care of. It's okay. He's sick. We'll do it," which was all a straight up lie. And I think I mentioned the fact to Chris that he's not telling the whole truth. Like I definitely said something there, so it shouldn't be that big of a twist. So I did see that in there. But we haven't had a chance to talk to Avarice yet, so that's going to be obviously a very big critical dialogue sequence that's coming up. The only thing that would really fuck things up is if the players literally like kick down the door and want to start initiative. That would be upsetting for me. Obviously, I would try to trigger a cutscene. If this were a video game, it would be the case where you open the door and it's a cutscene. Like there's no chance to, you have to talk to her first. Now you could always lead to combat later, but I still want to have my dialogue sequence with Avarice. How powerful is Avarice? Well, that's a good question. In the book, I believe she is a little bit higher than a standard mage. I want to say a mage is a CR like 6, and I think she's a 7. Yeah, so in the book, she's a 10th level spellcaster, which interestingly puts it at CR 7, and she has 5th level spells. She's got some pretty good spells: counterspell, fireball, fly. One of the few like spellcasters just has amazing combat spells: fire shield, Big B's hand, mage armor, scorching ray, magic missile, like just great spells essentially. And she's wielding a staff of frost as her cool like magic item. So she's got spells she can cast from that, including Cone of Cold and Ice Storm and Wall of Ice. She also has 2 gargoyles that are not currently with her, that it says in the book. They are like off spying on the other wizards, which is pretty neat because she's got all these other spies. But that tells me again that she's not supposed to be, fought right now. In the book, it's horrible. Like when they meet her, which is supposed to be down in that cistern, so I'm changing things around by having her be up, in the castle itself. Literally, they walk in and she just says, "Get out," and that's the whole thing. And it just mentions the fact that you'll meet her again later, but there's no, there's nothing here. So I'm really expanding her role. I'm really expanding all of the Arcane Brotherhood's roles to be more along the lines of Valin's, where Valin is such a critical, almost too critical of an NPC that we haven't met yet. And I kind of want to make all the other Arcane Brotherhood as important as her role is. So, yeah, she's got 2 gargoyles named Gargle and Gurgle, which is fucking stupid. And in fact, her handout has her pictured with the gargoyles, which is a problem because she doesn't have them here, and I want to be able to show the handout. So I replaced that handout with one that just shows her, which is this one. Found that on the internet. I don't know why that the default handout in Roll20 is her with her 2 gargoyles, which doesn't make sense because they're not here with her. But the Staff of Frost is very cool. Thankfully, we have no wizard here. They would be all over that fucking staff, and maybe kill her just to get it. So I'm hoping this is a big dialogue sequence, and I'm hoping that she can convince the party, not necessarily to join her side, but just be like, "Hey, just check out the basement and you'll see like the bad things that he's done." And the fact that there's guards posted like where the Speaker would be. Like he is not also like just, the Speaker was basically just, the whole place was taken over by these people, and it was a violent uprising. I think I'm going to have the time frame be that it happened after or before she arrived, because maybe the Speaker would have learned his lesson after letting them in, that he wouldn't have let an Arcane Brotherhood like come and stay here or anything. But it had happened like maybe days after they changed, the Black Swords took over. Then she was admitted inside, and then she learned about everything that happened as she started talking to other people, researching Chardalin along with everybody else, and then she started kind of bringing people over to her side of the faction, which is to say, we don't have to stay in this castle and provoke the ire of everybody. And what we need to do is figure out the source of where this stuff is coming from. and that's going to be the real power. And then maybe we can figure out, you know, either how to make ourselves more powerful or how to free ourselves of our like lust for Chardelaine. It kind of depends on, I guess, how Chardelain's affecting them. But either way, she will be, and more importantly, she's more about militarizing against Auril, and Aural's, you know, permanite, versus where Kadroth is just trying to, like, you know, survive, and really he has kind of more political aspirations to kind of maybe even expand his entire influence into Kaer Denival, whereas Avarice does not have those kind of aspirations whatsoever. So that would be technically a better alliance for the players in terms of they're the 10 Towns Marshals and they want to be able to free the speaker and do all that. So, but it'll be interesting to see how they handle all this. I could, yeah, I thought about putting the gargoyles in the room for sure. It's a weird place to have. I guess gargoyles are only medium sized, aren't they? They wouldn't be like giant things in here, and these are pretty big rooms. Yeah, that's true. Guess I could put the gargoyles in there. Garg. It was an age of gargoyles. Do 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 do. Great fucking show. Yeah, they're medium. Well, I could just drag some gargoyles and put them in there, in which case I could, I guess, use that old handout. That's an idea. It would help prevent any attacks, probably, for sure. It just seems like it'd be odd to have the gargoyles just sitting there. I do like the fact that she's got them out spying, but I guess I could always just have her have more gargoyles, too. It doesn't even mention why the fact that she's got these gargoyles. Challenge would be for Avarice to convince the players, only the players would react. Yeah. It would be weird, especially now that they fucking know that Valravn's been spying for Avarice, and she's got that information. And then how do I implement Edmund and his Chardelaine, and who do I want to have hunting Edmund in the end? I was going to have it be the Arcane Brotherhood is hunting him, but then that would make it very hard for... I haven't established, that hasn't happened yet at all, which I should have had that happen before this quest if I was paying better attention. I should have had at least one instance of that happening. Maybe that can happen organically because of what happens here, in which case the Arcane Brotherhood would want to hunt him down for the possession of Chardelaine he now has, which, keep in mind, she knows that he's got Chardelaine, because that's what Valravn has been telling her. What she does with that information, I don't know if she necessarily wants Chardelaine, because she probably knows how dangerous it is. What she wants to know is where the fuck it's coming from. She's got her, you know, she's like a cop who doesn't care about the little drug dealer. She wants to know where the supply is coming from. In other words, she wants to know where Ithrin is. So that would be her main goal. Now, Kadroth, if he knew that they're carrying around Chardelaine, he would definitely want it. He wants to make sure that only his group possesses it. Partly out of care for people, because he just believes that if people have Chardelaine and they're not under his care, they will be corrupted and become a danger to others. He does believe that. Not necessarily a total power grab, but it is kind of, basically he does view it as like an exclusionary thing, where it's like, you can't handle this without my help and my teachings. Be like a very aggressive Professor X. It's like, no, you can't go anywhere else. You have to stay here. So I don't know in the end how to handle the fact that Avarice knows. That would be an interesting way where Avarice could say, hey, if Kadroth, you know, because she knows, so she could say, if Kadroth knew your friend here was carrying around raw Chardelaine, then he would absolutely like take you and take them. Whereas, and that would be true, I think. So that would be an interesting kind of twist to mention the fact that she would not, but he would. So maybe that would help convince things. Get over here, can bring the gargoyles, orders to go spy. I'm less enthusiastic about that. Players will go talk or go and go. I'm hoping they'll talk. And like I said, if and the way it's set up, it's not like they can, this isn't really an ambush party, and they don't. It's not really a location you can ambush very well. You literally have to open a door, and they're right there. So, I mean, they may have a plan where it's like, okay, everybody sneak around and do all these kind of things. It'll be interesting to see. Or maybe they'll be like, all right, let's just go have a meeting. Because, as far as I know, and keep in mind, Avarice did spy on them a little bit with her familiar. It's a little bit of questioning in terms of what she all heard, because at some point they said, we're going to do the message spell and try to do things privately, but it got a little bit muddy in terms of, okay, how much is actually going privately and how much are you guys just shouting at each other once he actually reveals the fact that he's a spy. And certainly up to a certain point, he was out loud until I had that moment, which I tried to interrupt Chris in terms of, like, you don't have to do this, man. And have the raven, like, cawing. So it's going to be a big deal for sure, and I'm hoping I can convince him. If they do decide to actually fight Avarice, then she will most likely just cast a spell and leave. And the bummer is that if they go back to Kadroth and said, okay, we did it, that would be the least satisfying outcome here, because then they don't believe her, they don't go down to the basement area, and they essentially just complete the quest by getting rid of her. And that I don't have a good contingency plan if that happens, essentially. Mainly because that would be her easiest way out, because she knows how strong this party is, and she doesn't necessarily want to fight them by herself. I guess if I include her gargoyles, that would be a helpful deterrent in this fight versus just her, so maybe that is the right thing to do. Maybe just like one gargoyle. It would be a slight deterrent. They do talk a lot. It was a really good role playing. She attempt to get Edmund on her side. Yeah, I think so. That would be, that's knowledge that she has because Valravn told her, and the fact that, hey, we've got, we know you've got Chardalyn, you're interested in it, we've been hearing about your exploits. I'm not your enemy. I'm literally just trying to get information, and this information, what's interesting is I'm actually tempted to have her reveal the information that Valen is supposed to reveal, to further incentivize the players to work with her, because she could possess a lot more information that the players necessarily wouldn't get until later when they actually go to I'm going to put Valen in Sunblight and have her free her. But she could mention the fact that, she was sent here to hunt down a wizard who did something. She's not sure what, but and then that something seemed to have caused this entire thing. And at the same time, she's noticing all of this. By thing I mean the rhyme, the everlasting winter and the night. And at the same time, all the Chardalyn that keeps propping up more and more often, and she believes all of these things are connected. And these are all things that Valen would probably tell the players, but if it's a fun, big RP scene, then maybe I could reveal some more of that information and really expand her role. And then basically have her say, like, you can't trust other... And the one thing she will ask for sure is, like, what about other wizards? And I asked Chris this specifically. I was like, have you told her about other things that you've done in this campaign? Have you told her about what happened at Mountain Climb and at the Beautiful Mine? Like, are you reporting on all that? And he basically said, no, I'd probably just stick to, like, Edmund and spying on him and kind of what's going on there and the Chardalyn stuff, which disappointed me because I was hoping that he would have reported the Wizard of Dazan to her, because obviously that would have huge relevance to her. So she will pointedly ask about, have you heard of any other wizards or any other thing going on? And then it's going to be up to them to share that information. And then, because I figure you can establish this trust by sharing information, she will then reveal, hey, why don't you go check the basement of this castle, and you'll find the truth of what Kadroth is and what he's all about. So that maybe that will be the epilogue to this quest, is they do go down there, they end up having that big encounter, and then she can establish control of the rest of them, and maybe even spin it with the help of the party if they end up working with her, and maybe she can take more control and have fewer combatants, is by saying, like, hey, look at how Kadroth has been corrupted himself, like, we need to get out of this place, we need to go and find the source and who's with me, and then she can take the people and leave, and then that would essentially free the speaker. Interestingly, Horror, which I don't know if the players just forgot about him or what, but I did mention the fact that he was the one that actually let them in. I think the players just, I don't know, didn't realize that or something, because I did mention his name at one point. Wood is a Avarice loyalist, so he would not be the one that would join in the fight with Kadroth. He would be on Team Avarice, essentially, because he does believe in basically being more militarized and getting out of this freaking castle. So same thing with, I guess, Felspura, which is the, or Felsupara, which is the tiefling chick, which was a fun little side quest I was going to write about, like how he's, you know, he's technically a you know, part of this faction, but really just has the hots for this tiefling lady that like recruited him. But again, the players just seem to completely forget about Horror, so that's fine. We can drop it if we want to. There's a lot going on in this place. I am a Wayward Echo. I haven't caught Rogue Watson live in forever. I am live. I'm glad you could catch me. I am thinking about modifying, or I did actually modify Kadroth's stat block, because it doesn't make sense for him to use the Cult Fanatic, because I'm not really making these guys a cult necessarily. They're not the devil worshipping guys they were in the original text. Instead, they all have Chardalyn and they all follow Kadroth. So I'm thinking maybe a sorcerer or warlock would be more appropriate. And then I realized, okay, I've got the magic rules for the Chardalyn amulets, which involve being able to store spells and then release them. So he's going to be basically, I used the stat block of a Cult Fanatic, and then I changed his spellcasting ability to be Charisma instead of Wisdom, because again, either Warlock or Sorcerer is going to be Charisma-based, which, oddly enough, I kept the stats, and his Charisma is higher than his Wisdom, so like they should just use Charisma to be a better stat block. And then I gave him a bunch of Warlock spells, basically. However, if I want to use the rules of the amulet, there's a chance that it could suck up any spells of first level or higher. So I think what I would do is, if I do get that moment where they're in the basement, which I'm getting kind of ahead of myself now with that, and he's able to, you know, have a combat encounter, then he would cast, I added Everard's Black Tentacles as a cool, like, one-time big cast he can use. So I think that's pretty appropriate, and I like the fact that the high-level Chardalyn stuff is really going to be very, like, Far Realm, Eldritch, you know, nasty stuff, and then he could just shoot a bunch of Eldritch Blasts. But and I know it's bad to assume, but let's presume the players talk to Avarice. They at least get convinced enough to go follow up on the clue she says, which is go down into the basement and check out, you know, the truth of it. And the fact that when they go to the second level, they'll see that where the speaker's being held is under guard. And unless they have some kind of magic trickery or something, which they might, or they just want to fight them, then they can come in and see the speaker, who will be, of course, very much under house arrest and believed he's like a prisoner in his home, and he'll be able to reveal all the information and confirm it himself. He's also a gigantic asshole, which I think is really funny. Like, he's not going to be this big, oh, thank you. He's going to be like, it's about fucking time. You know, that's to where the players are just going to be like, oh my God, this guy. I look forward to that for sure, which is funny because Kadroth's actually, and that's going to be reflected if they ever talk to the cook. They happen to go into the kitchen. The cook basically just doesn't care, like, about anything that's going on. He's been spared the big coup, and he's still running the food. And he actually thinks Kadroth's a better boss than the speaker is, so he kind of is just like, whatever. You know, new boss, same as the old boss. But if they go down to the trap door, I want to make that more of a fun little dungeon crawl, which in this case is this little cistern area right here, which we do get a little map for this. They'll find bodies in C-17. I should mention the fact that if they go to the trapdoor, they'll also have to use some kind of magic trickery or a combat encounter to make it down here. Obviously, they would not normally let just anybody go down. I don't care if they flash their badges or what. They're not going to let people go down to that trapdoor because they know there's bodies down there. So there would be a little bit of fight. I used 2 cultists, and I did use just a standard Cult Fanatic stat block here. I haven't decided. Technically, everybody's got Chardalyn stuff, but I don't know if I want to literally, like, move different, like, have everybody have different Chardalyn weapons and all this stuff. I did give these, this is the Thug stat block, these guards, Chardalyn maces, and then I gave the half-ogre kind of bodyguard, I believe, a Chardalyn axe. So they do have that increase in their stat block. I did not do the same thing with the cultists, however. I may give... Maybe the fanatics have amulets, and these guys are maybe have... I don't know if everybody necessarily even has a Chardalyn weapon or item just yet, so maybe I'll just use regular... Which I think the regular cultist stat block is nothing. They just have like a fucking dagger. They don't have spells, so... Or, sorry, they have a scimitar. Anyway, so that'll be a minor little... And you could actually fight here and not trigger the whole thing, because they're pretty isolated. The castle is not exactly full. So Once they go down here, they'll find bodies wrapped up here, which is actually the bodies of their people that they've preserved more respectfully, and then they will find the bodies of all of the guards of the speakers, basically the castle occupants. Float. Wife walk by after she's heard everything. They'll actually find the bodies floating in the water down here, which is really cool. And it doesn't mention the fact that this is, it's D&D, so like you should have something fun. Like, is it like is it an undead situation, or can the arms like grasp people or something? It doesn't say anything like it. It didn't even say that the frigid water actually even damages them, which I think is a disappointing thing. So I really want to make this more of a little dungeon crawl. It just mentions there's let's see, how many are there? Half frozen bodies near the bottom. There's 6 human corpses and 6 dwarf corpses. There's a dozen bodies in this cistern, which is a pretty big little area. As you can see here, it is 85 feet across. And I mentioned the fact that it's pitch dark, so even people with dark vision aren't going to be able to see all the way through. In fact, let's grab one of the players. See what it looks like from their point of view. You can see that's how far it gets. In fact, I believe I created a line right there to kind of remind myself. But really, I don't even need that, do I? Because, yeah, it ends up, it'll be pretty natural. So they can't see across anyway. We can just get rid of that line. So that'll be fun, because it'll just be this cistern goes, and then I've got a boat here. They can hop across, and then they'll see the wall, and that'll be pretty cool. So they'll find the bodies. They'll see bodies in the water. This C-19 is supposed to be just an empty room with grain and a rat chewing on it. I'm going to keep the rat. And yes, I wrote down what does the rat know, because thanks to Thimbleweed, I have to fucking write down what every animal in existence knows, because he's going to use speak with animals on every fucking animal he comes across, which is a funny character trait and a fun thing to do. But as a DM, it means I have to be careful about any time I mentioned any fucking kind of animal in the text. And yes, there are goats in the kitchen as well. He is going to be fucking talking to that animal, which I'm going to make this rat a hilariously smart informant. Like most of the animals I use dumb voices for, and they're not very intelligent. I figure rats are pretty smart, pretty resourceful, and if he actually talks to the rat will basically be able to tell him like everything about this area, which would be pretty fun. Catch up on the chat for a second. Yeah, Fran and Thimbleweed are the wild cards. Ruin trying to work through it with conversation. Maybe. I think, well, we'll see. I mean, it's what the bummer is, a lot of this hinges on the fact that Avarice at least gets a chance to tell them to go down to the basement. So hopefully we can work on that and not go into immediate fight. I will do my best to avoid having a fight. I may actually put at least one gargoyle in there just as a show of force, I guess. Subtle force. I think the guys, any extra cult bonuses, modern kinds, or elsewhere. I did actually look at that. The problem is they're all very much tied to being devil-worshipping cultists, and these guys are not devil-worshipping cultists. I guess I could just re-theme some of them and say that this is because they're powered by Chardalyn. What I was thinking of doing is having... I already established that Kadroth has an amulet. He's wearing one of the amulets, and we know that. And I was thinking it'd be interesting if maybe... This might be too much, but whenever he is like casting spells and stuff, they can see that maybe he's got Chardalyn implanted in his body. Like maybe he's been, experimenting with it and actually, putting it in, like grafting it to himself to like make more power and stuff. And that'll be reflected by the fact that he can, cast these, like something like Everett's Black Tentacles. And then I even thought around with the idea of, okay, what if, you can see I've got the little token here. What if the players kill him and he's got the Chardalyn embedded in it, and his body erupts into a gibbering mouther? I thought, okay, that might be a little too much and might actually make this fight way too difficult. But just kind of a funny thought I had if I wanted to make things really more corruption. But that might be, I didn't establish the fact that he's that crazy. That might be going too far in terms of his personality. I did establish the fact that he does care about his people and all that, and he wasn't this big power-hungry dude. Avarice actually is more power-hungry than him. So it was a thought process I had, but I may drop that, and A, because it's probably too much combat, and B, because I don't know if that would actually fit with Kadroth's personality that he would necessarily go that far. But if I did do that, I could make the prison area creepier. Excuse me. So the point here is when the players jump in this boat, which I think can only fit 2 people, Yeah, it holds 2 medium characters plus their gear. Now, granted, we do have 2 very small characters, so presumably you could fit more of them in a boat. But otherwise, I don't know if you have to leave people. It gets kind of awkward. Like, what do you do then? You leave people behind, or they have some kind of other method? I mean, I guess well, Robin could always use his Misty Step to at least get this far. I think I need some kind of rule for the water, though. I'm not going to let people just... Because this water's supposed to be freezing cold. So maybe like a con save for exhaustion, maybe? For frigid water, I think would be fair. And the point is, they will see this giant slab to the east, which is closed, and there's no way to open it except for a lever. And the lever... Let's see, where does it talk about this? The lever that lowers and raises the gate is in area C22. So what I've changed is I've changed all of these 3 rooms down here. This is originally like Avarice's room and a shrine to Levistus and all that. I'm getting rid of all of that. And instead I'm turning this into the castle's dungeon and having it be that C21 and 22 are cells, which are kind of hilariously giant cells. What I could, if I wanted to make it more creepy, is I could have them be like tables where they operate on people. And maybe they're trying to... the idea here is there's a Chardalyn Berserker in here, and essentially Kadroth... Again, I'm very leery about making him too evil, because that's not necessarily my point. But instead, he was trying to cure this Chardalyn Berserker. In other words, sometimes people come to him that are... Or they find people that are too far gone, they're too corrupted, and he can't seem to reverse the process. And maybe he's been experimenting on this person, and they've gone so far into, you know, madness that they just can't do anything about that. I don't know if I could use a unique stack block for that, other than the fact that it would be a Chardalyn Berserker without his weapon, so I'd be using unarmed strikes, which I would flavor as like a 1d4 versus just literally 1 plus your strength mod, just to make it more interesting. But he's currently in, you know, it's in a prison thing. And then C20 would have 3 levers. 2 of them on either side would obviously open the 2 prison doors, and the one in the middle would open C23. I'm also thinking about dropping a trap in here, because it seems like it would make sense for them to have some kind of security system, and it's fucking D&D, and we should just have a trap every once in a while. Come on. So if you have any recommendations of good, solid, like dungeon or literally like prison security trap system, it wouldn't be too, you know, sophisticated. Maybe a pressure plate, or if they crafted it, maybe it'd have to something that, you know, it would either be a standard one that came with the castle, or to help, you know, further disincentivize prisoners being able to escape if they did escape, or it would be something that the Black Swords guys put in themselves, in which case I would make it so if you have Chardalyn on your person, it does not trigger the trap. But anybody who doesn't have Chardalyn, it would trigger a trap. In which case they would have had to put something in there. In which case, in that case, it would probably be magically based. And I'm not sure how to convey that. Maybe some kind of glyphs on the walls or something, and use like a glyph of warding or something. So yeah, that's my thought process here. And so, in other words, I kind of want to turn this into a little bit of a mini dungeon. And then the idea would be, once they do that, if they open this slab, then they can clearly find out that there are, in fact, still alive prisoners in here, which are being kept mainly as incentive to keep the speaker in line and keep him, you know, working and signing important documents, and still, you know, having conversations with people and all that, and still putting on the ruse that he's in charge, because otherwise they would, like, kill these people. So essentially they are leverage, and have been kept in, like, you know, obviously just horrible conditions and things. It's freezing down here, and they've got barely any food and all that. So at that point, I guess that does definitely paint Kadroth as a pretty evil person. There's really no way around that. Who is, you know, generally still supportive of his people, but that would probably damn him in the player's eyes. And of course, when they're leaving, and again, you know, if they're here, you know, look at what their vision is. They can't see the western side. If they're here, they can't even see the western side. If they jump in the boat, they can just see the edge. So I'll have to make sure I watch that. This is Frey having 60 feet of dark vision, I believe. And what I would love to do is then trigger a scene with this force, which is Kadroth, 2 thugs, and probably his bodyguard. They trigger a fight while the party is, like, right here. which he would immediately start by, casting Everard's Black Tentacles, which is his big spell I've got here, and then have this big showdown where the players are in this really dicey position. Of course, the Black Tentacles will destroy their boat. They get dropped in the water. They have to then swim. Maybe that would be too difficult of a fight. I don't know, but they're still long rested. Like, they have their full things. They haven't been tested at all. This whole time, there's been no combat encounters whatsoever. So I'm thinking that could be a pretty cool thing to have happen, and that would just trigger the fact that, it makes sense they would have some kind of alarm system where if, levers are pulled or something, then at least Kadroth would know. So it fits the horror aspect of the game. Yeah, I mean, are you talking about which one? He explodes into a gibbering mouther? It certainly could. The other thing I could do is have it be that this victim in here is so far gone, and maybe that's the result of being even further corrupted by Chardalyn. Or I have it be where they're maybe trying to implant Chardalyn in his body as some kind of sick, like, maybe this is the next evolution of it. And I could, that's not a bad idea. I could even put like a journal entry, a classic storytelling device in the room, and make it more of a scientific thing. And Kadroth is like, we're still experimenting on others in terms of how, the first step was obviously having, raw Chardalyn is still dangerous on the weak-minded, but if crafted and attuned properly, most people can handle it, or the strong of will can handle it. However, it still has corrupting powers, and now we want to see what happens if we embed it in the body and like graft it to their system more appropriately, and then you could turn that into this dude who's on the table just like going crazy. And then if the party interacted with him in some way, maybe he could explode into a gibbering mouther. That's an idea too. Instead of doing that to Kadroth, to have that doing it to himself, it seems like he would be more like doing it to others. I'm kind of convincing myself of that now. That'd be kind of cool. Does a half ogre have a Chardalyn weapon? Yes, he does. I believe so. Well, he doesn't have to, but I think that was the idea. Is all the followers here. That's kind of what makes them part of this group. If you want to join their exclusive club, you have to be wielding or be attuned to some form of Chardalyn. Oddly, half ogres have a 10 charisma. That's pretty impressive. And I would follow the same rules for them, which is for all Chardalyn weapons on a hit, it's a DC 13 con saving throw or become poisoned. And if they happen to be concentrating on a spell, they have disadvantage on the concentration check. If you get a crit with that weapon, they automatically fail the con save and their concentration check. But if you miss with your weapon attack, you have to then make a charisma saving throw or suffer a form of short-term madness. I really need to put a madness table into my game because we're using madness a lot more. Which could certainly be very debilitating for my dudes because I put both these thugs and the half ogre. Now, technically, he would probably have more people with him, but I don't want to necessarily have just a giant fight here, and maybe it's very likely not necessarily everybody knows what's going on down here. Maybe it was just kind of his elite shock troopers, the most militant, the most loyal would have been involved in this. And maybe other, I don't know, for whatever reason, I don't necessarily want to just throw like literally like 20, cultists down here to fight them. I think that would be a bridge too far, but I'm thinking if we literally start a fight here, the two thugs have heavy crossbows. Kadroth, like I said, has spells. The half ogre can't really do anything, but he would just be there protecting Kadroth, and he would expect everybody to be killed here, and I think that'd be kind of a cool fight, and possibly like the only battle that occurs. And I hope it happens because I need the players to be able to go down here. So a lot of this hinges on the fact that the players listen to Avarice at least enough to go down into the basement. The other avenue is if they go and follow up on trying to figure out where the speaker is. They get past those guards and they talk to the speaker. He will essentially give them the same quest. Because he knows his people are being kept alive and he assumes they're being kept in the basement. I don't know how much information the speaker can give the players. Maybe I need to be more direct and just say, hey, they've got a trapdoor in the northwest corner. Or he would probably know, actually, his own fucking castle layout. So he would assume, like, well, I know there's an underground cistern. It's probably half frozen by now, which is correct. And that's got to be the place where where my people are being kept. And then that would then direct the players down there. So even if, worst case scenario, the players just kick down the door, want to fight Avarice, she has to escape. Hopefully they can at least follow up on talking to the speaker. Again, the only really awful thing that can occur is if they still just align very heavily with Kadroth, which is where we ended last session, and believe everything he says, and then they just go, they just leave. Like, there's nothing else to do here. Which, I mean, you know, I'm adding a quest. I am putting the quest in here. Called Black Swords, and it just says discover what's going on in the castle in Caer Dineval, which I'm hoping is enough of a clue to be like, you haven't really discovered necessarily what's going on in this castle. But you know, it's ultimately D&D is all about the idiom that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You know, you can set up all these things, you can give them all these clues and nudges and ideas, but ultimately, if you're really playing D&D or any tabletop RPG, it should be the players that are making these decisions on what they're doing and what they want to follow up on. So I'll try to respond to that best I can. The other option, you know, one possibility is the players listen to that and they immediately just go back to Kadroth, kick down his door, and want to fight him right then and there. If that's the case, that would be less satisfying narratively, because they'll essentially be taking on the boss that late. I would probably have him try to flee out the secret door, but it's gonna be pretty. I mean, I guess you can always take the disengage action. I could just give him fucking Misty Step, like, he, you know, nobody knows what his fucking stat block is. And he could Misty. Can you Misty Step through walls? I think you can. And then he could try to basically escape into his, like, trapdoor area, or just escape somewhere. He could just fuck off, and then the players could then follow up on it. It does say you have to see it. Okay. Shoot. Well, I can still try to disengage and run through the secret door. I mean, if you disengage, you have attacks opportunity. You could go through the secret door. That's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And then you could still bonus action Misty Step if I gave that to him. That would fuck me up if they actually just turned around and went after Kadroth again. He may, you know, he could just say, you know, he's not seeing anybody right now. You know, I'll convey any messages you need to him. Like, that would be interesting. Like, once they talk to Avarice, suddenly you can't talk to him anymore. So I could try and close that door on them. Expeditious Retreat. That is such a funny name for a spell. Expeditious Retreat. Expedish. I could have called it like Egress or something a little more elegant. Let's see. One bonus action allows you to move at incredible speed. When you cast a spell and it's bonus action each of your turns, you can take the dash action. Yeah, that'd be useful, but you'd still have to. Well, I guess you could disengage as an action and then cast Expeditious Retreat as a bonus action, couldn't you? That would allow you to still disengage. Because the problem is you got to disengage, right? Players are going to fuck you up so bad if you allow those attacks opportunity. So I guess you could still disengage, and then, yeah, you could cast that. Alright, I'll add that onto a spell list. Maybe that'll help me remember. I am building my own dude here. So while I'm remembering, I need to turn off Always Whisper rolls, because I had that on while I was casting spells earlier to make sure I had everything set up correctly. I thought about using the, was it Mordenkainen's or Valos that added the other mages, like Enchanter, Transmuter, Illusionist, which are more powerful, specialized mage. Still not as powerful as the actual, like, little mage stat block, I believe. It's either mage or archmage. But the problem is those guys had 5th level spells, and I think that was a bridge too far. My guys are level 4. They don't even have access to 3rd level spells yet. So I'm okay with, like, using one nuclear option, which in this case would be Everard's Black Tentacles, because I think that'd be pretty fucking cool. But otherwise, I was not okay with just, like, flinging just multiple fireballs at the party. I thought that was just going to be too much and make Kadroth too strong. If you notice, I did keep his Cult Fanatic hit points and gave him near max hit points, because I figure bosses probably should have that. Could this be a byproduct of Chardalyn for all those who come in contact? Yeah, that's kind of the idea. I like the idea that there is an evolutionary process if you become maybe afflicted by too much madness from Chardalyn. The other thing I could do is turn them into a Nothic, which I think is what Ythrin did to people, but that would be if you were a... I could literally have an evolutionary skill tree, or not a skill tree, a... what do you call it when you're like a strategy game and you've got different paths you can evolve into. I don't know, progressions, whatever. If you're like a spellcaster, you become a Nothic, and if you're not a spellcaster, maybe you become a Gibbering Mouther. So that'd be kind of interesting. I like that idea too. I like Gibbering Mouther is just a really fun stat block, by the way. If we fucking look at it. Off topic, I started watching Storm King's Thunder. Now almost done with Tomb of Annihilation. Should I watch Princess, Fandelver, or Lost Plains next? Isn't it great having all these options? I can't believe I've been playing D&D for this long. I'm extremely blessed and privileged to be able to have this awesome group of fantastic friends and playing D&D for the years. If you don't mind the wild change in the production values, by which I mean our audio and video qualities, then if you take that part of it out, I don't know. You could. I would definitely say don't watch Princes before Fandelver, because Fandelver, we continue the Fandelver characters into Princes, which I would recommend anybody who plays Last One of Fandelver, which everybody should. So many 5e campaigns are built to be able to then start from that level 4 or 5 where you end Fandelver and then begin your next campaign. Like Storm Kings works out great for that. Like a lot of them, just because the adventure doesn't really start until later. Rime is one of the few that actually does have a good early game, which we're exploring right now, obviously. But definitely, Fandelver is still pretty great. And obviously, that literally was our first time playing D&D 5th edition back in whatever it was, 2015 or something. So we screw up a lot of rules. Again, you have to kind of accept all that very early. But Fandelver into Princes would be the appropriate scale. And that was before, I believe, before Rochelle played with us too. It was just 4 players and me. And Lost Plains is probably, God, it's like MCU now, isn't it? Where you have to like determine the order. War of the Lost Plain is Chris's homebrew campaign. It's completely original, and the idea was to kind of make an Avengers Endgame style thing where we could play our existing characters and actually level them up beyond like 12, which is where a lot of the 5e campaigns stopped. So we use characters from other campaigns into Lost Plains. So if you do, you would technically lose a little bit of backstory if you jumped right into that one, because we pull characters from multiple campaigns, I believe. Well, and here's the fun part. We also have several one-shots. I don't know if I have a good playlist for that to find the one-shots, actually. You can go to roguewatson.com and go to the whatever the tabletop RPG section is and find them there. I need to make a better playlist of that, but we've done several one-shots over the years, and that's where Heather's character comes from, which is Scarlet. Her paladin actually comes from doing like 3 or 4 different one-shots. So her character comes from there. Raymond reprises Kethra, who he played through Lost Mine and Princes. Reese does Tim, who he played in Storm King's Thunder. Rochelle does Gillian, who she played in Tomb of Annihilation, with slightly like everybody's allowed a respec. It's like Mass Effect 2, like where Shepard, gets that respec. And then I play a completely original character because I only had one character I could have played, and I figured I don't get to play characters very often, so I'm going to play somebody new. So I just made a new character for level 13, I believe we started on. So yeah, sorry about the aside, but that is good knowledge buried deep in this crafting Icewind Dale stream for session 13 if you wanted to catch up on any of our streams. Yeah, should watch those back to back. Prince has been my favorite game to run so far. Watch those next. Prince is great. I like that campaign a lot, especially if you like dungeon crawls. If that's your thing, if you like D&D because of the dungeon crawls, and I definitely do, Prince's still has some of the best dungeon crawls in all of the 5e campaigns they've done over the years. It also has really great like cultists, really great factions to be able to use, cool stat blocks. It kind of has a shit story, which if I was a better DM back then, I would have improved. And it doesn't do a good job with its villains in terms of making them have more personality and stuff. Even though there's a whole section on it in the beginning of that book, they don't really have any effect on the story or anything like that. So there's a lot of problems with that campaign, mainly with the story. But in terms of just dungeon crawling and the flavor of the factions and stuff, it's a lot of fun. Anyway, Gibbering Mouthers are very fun creatures. Very low armor class, good hit points. It's got multiple attacks. It's got a huge, it's such a swingy creature. It only has a +2 to hit, but it does insane amounts of damage. And it's got this interesting, babbling thing where I believe it kind of has this like madness thing it creates in people, with everybody around it, which is pretty cool. So that'd be a neat creature to use, I think. Transform it into a gibbering mouther. But, you know, how do I do that? Like, it's behind this. Well, I guess I could close these doors and make it so if they open them, they find this guy, like, strapped to a table. So maybe it's less of a prison, more of a, like a, the creepy equivalent of a doctor's office, or a surgeon's table, basically, where they've been trying to work on this guy. I could have him then explode into a gibbering mouther when they get close. That'd be kind of interesting. Better than an unarmed Charlatan Berserker, for sure. Yeah, I think you're convincing me. A lazy DM first. But yeah, we need to talk about the trap. Yeah, I'm going to scroll up on that. Trapdoor that drops into the cold water. Spell that pushes through thunder or force into the water unless they have magic. Would be like Thunder Wave, right? Would that be a good one to use? I'm all about just repurposing spells, because if you look at all the spells, you pretty much have all the options you need with all the spells. And I did read, what is it? Xanathar has like trap. I think, well, DMG might have this too, where it talks about, hey, here's how to balance traps for different tiers. In terms of like and it does say if you want to have a dangerous trap for characters level 1 through 4, use a first level spell. They're level 4. So, you know, it gets kind of iffy. You could push it to up to a 3rd level spell. Or I could just honestly upscale it too. The Thunder Wave, each creature in a 15-foot cube, which would be just everybody in this hallway. Let's make a con saving throw on a failed save. A creature takes 2d8 thunder damage is pushed 10 feet away. Which would keep people... Okay, that could be a good deterrent, because if it, especially if it activates literally every time, it would continually like push people back into this room. But the idea being, if you enter, it would also push you back out into the water. Now, clearly they would have a boat there, so that would probably I would probably allow some kind of dex save to get the boat versus getting knocked into the water. It says what, 10 feet. And I would, you know, I'd probably include the trap right here. I wonder if I have a good like. I could just draw a picture. That'd be the best thing to do. Just draw a shape. Draw to hold. Draw a rectangle. There we go. Gotta make sure to put that on the GM layer so the players don't see. What is this fucking rectangle here? There we go. That would be a note to myself. I like using Thunder Wave here. And it would work both ways. And the idea here is it would be... I think it would be triggered on... if people don't have Charlatan on them, which would be fabulous if Frey or Edmund are the first in here, because they do have Charlatan on them, so they would not trigger that trap. But as soon as somebody else makes it in, they would then trigger it. And only when it triggers do like glyphs light up on either side of the of this hallway. Trigger that trap. So I kind of like that idea for the trap. We'll put that under my notes for 20 trap. Is that kind of like what the Glyph of Warding does? Or does the Glyph of Warding have its own spell? Glyph. Glyph, right? Glyph of Warding. 3rd level Abjuration. Oh my god. Like, wizards, what are you doing? Nobody wants to read all this. Jesus Christ. Cast a spell. You inscribe a glyph that affects other creatures. Glyph can cover an area no longer than 10 feet in diameter. It's perfect. The bad thing is the glyph goes away, does it? If the surface or object is moved more than 10 feet. Oh, never mind. You move the thing. Glyph is nearly invisible. Requires successful investigation check against your spell save DC to be found. You decide what triggers the glyph when you cast the spell. And do you decide just what it does? God, I don't want to read all this. It's too much. Okay, there. Wait, now I'm seeing it. You inscribe the glyph, choose explosive runes or a spell glyph. Explosive runes. When triggered, the glyph erupts. If they just had fucking paragraph breaks. The spheres. Triggered, the glyph erupts with magical energy in a 20-foot radius sphere centered on the glyph. Okay, but spell glyph is just you can store a prepared spell of 3rd level or lower in the glyph by casting it as a part of creating the glyph. Spell must target a single creature in an area. The spell being stored has no immediate effect when cast in this way. Bad thing is, does it go away? Because I'd like it to keep going. When the glyph is triggered, the stored spell is cast. If the spell has a target, it targets a creature that triggers the spell affects an area. I don't think it goes away. It does say the stored spell is cast. You can only store one spell. It's not a very good security system. Unless it just obviously alerts everybody too. Okay. Wizard cast Wall of Text. It's super effective. The DM's eyes glaze over and forgets things. Terrible spell. I mean, I get it. You put a trap down and the trap does things. Good lord. Okay, well, I could use... I think I still want to use Thunderwave. I would have these glyphs. The idea is I think it'd be fun if the glyphs were on... Maybe they take a second to recharge. But they would continuously trigger. Is that too powerful to have it continuously trigger? Called a Glyph of Thunderwave. But we do need to allow a, what is it, investigation check against your spell save DC. What would Kadroth's spell save DC be? DCB. I think it's a 12, actually. That's what I figured out, because I upped it to Charisma. Yeah, this is a 12. It's only a DC 12 investigation check. Now, here's the thing. Do I need to call that out? You know, how nice are our DMs generally when it comes to giving this information? Because right now my players generally don't play very cautiously. You know, they don't just go room to room and have the 10-foot pole and poke things and have little bags of squirrels they throw around. Like, generally they're just kind of walking down hallways and triggering shit left and right. So do I actually call down the fact that, hey, you look down here and you see what look like arcane etchings on the walls? Or do I just say, hey, you look down the hall and you see levers on the other side? And if somebody mentions the fact that, okay, I look around, do I see anything else? Then I may mention that. But otherwise, I don't know if I'll be fast and loose with that information about you see these glyphs. I'm torn on being too nice about that. And they could use Dispel Magic to get rid of it. I don't know if they have Dispel Magic. Does it mention the fact that... Well, what does Dispel Magic do? Well, let's just see if they have Dispel Magic. Valravn would probably have it. Anybody's got it, he would. He's a bard. He does not have Dispel Magic. I don't think anybody else can have Dispel Magic either. Artificer, I don't know what you can do. He does not have it either. Okay. So... They don't have a way to dispel it anyway. Charges for the trap? Possibly. Thunderwave triggers whenever someone without Chardalyn enters this. I'll give him the 5-foot space. I'm not going to trigger it immediately at the entrance. I'll let them step in a couple feet. And then it'll be like this space right here that they enter. That would trigger the trap. Light up the whole room, and it would shove people, if they triggered it from this direction, shove them back into the water, which would be this spot right here, which is probably where the boat's going to be. But again, I would allow a deck save to try and get back on the boat without falling in the water. Or if you're trying to exit the room, then you would be falling backwards. And that would be a security system going both ways. What I could do is up that to a 3rd level spell. Why don't we cut the difference and make it a 2nd level Thunderwave spell, which would be 3d8 thunder damage. On a, what is it, DC 12 con save, which is not that hard. 12 con, especially, I mean, if Frey could just fucking take it. You just take half damage. Okay, 3D DC 12 con save, 3d8 thunder damage, and push 10 feet. You can probably hear me typing. I've got a pretty clacky keyboard. That's how I like it. Half damage on success. Yeah, what's funny is they don't seem to ever care about traps or anything. They just kind of barrel at me. Even the closest would maybe be in the Tomb of Annihilation Mega Dungeon. They might have been a little bit more cautious there, but even then, they just kind of accept things as they go. What's funny is I really thought it would be the case in the Tourmaline Mine when I showed them like traps being triggered and they first started triggering traps, and they still would just barrel through like hallways and not look. So like, all right, well, you got your shot, and that's what happened. All right, so it's gonna be a trap there. Yeah, that would definitely be that's basically the alarm system. Is the sound going off, this giant boom would definitely trigger it. They would certainly hear. I like the idea of turning this into more of a laboratory than a prison. I think that'd be more narratively interesting, and would allow me to use my gibbering mouther. Turn this into a door. Turn this one into a door. And have him be basically strapped to a table. I may put some more details in this room, because unfortunately, as much as I like the art and the texture on these maps, they don't include any details whatsoever. I've had to add all the little details in there. But may include a little laboratory thing or something. And have it be that this guy was being experimented on. Maybe he was already too far gone, which is how Kadroth kind of morally justified it. But then they've been like implanting Chardalyn in his body, maybe as a way to try to reverse it, not necessarily as a way to turn him into some monstrosity or something, but he is genuinely like trying to help people who have Chardalyn, and trying to use, weirdly enough, Chardalyn to like cure them of the Chardalyn madness. And I think when the players go in and maybe get some information from that, then I will trigger some kind of cool like gibbering mouther encounter, which is just gonna be like a little mini fight that they can fight this really crazy, creepy looking creature, and know that Chardalyn is not to be trifled with. And maybe then they would start thinking twice about even carrying that shit around. Yeah, I just think it's such a fucking cool creature, and I love the idea of people like exploding into this kind of creature too. Speaking of aliens, we're gonna talk more about aliens when we talk about Revel's End and what happened there. I think I'm leaning towards doing an LV426 situation, which would be really fun. We have gone over. I know I was late to crafting as always due to baby stuff, but we have now gone over my hour time, even with starting late and now ending almost 12:20. So we're gonna have to wrap this stuff up. We've talked about a lot of stuff here. I'm very excited about tomorrow's session. Hopefully things go at least semi according to plan, but of course it is D&D, and you never quite know what's going to happen. But you've heard my plans, and we'll see if we can execute hopefully at least most of them, and make this a narratively satisfying and possibly kind of dark, creepy moments involved, and have some fun villain stuff too. So thank you all for joining me for this week's Crafting Icewind Dale. If you enjoy the content, please do check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Wizard Princess, Christopher Thomas, Captain Mike, Adam, Aiden, Stan, Nathan, Alex, Chad, Alexander, Dan, Daniel, and Cam. And gold patrons: RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Ross, Lippy Spuds, Jerome, Sklenia, Nick, Farty McButterpants, Blood Angel, Brunos, Baboon, Nathan, and Fast Like a Tortoise. See you all for D&D tomorrow night.